1882. Colorado Territory. Silver mines bleeding money from the mountains while Denver swells with fortune hunters and snake oil peddlers. But in a canvas tent on the outskirts of town, something darker pulls crowds. Two souls bound by flesh and law in ways that defy nature and decency. The Donnelly twins, Sarah and Mary, joined at the hip, forced into marriage to each other by territorial law, kept in a wooden cage for public viewing. How did two children become the most profitable attraction west of the Mississippi? What happens when society decides your body makes you property? Sarah Catherine Donnelly and Mary Elizabeth Donnelly entered this world on March 15, 1864, in a sod house 20 miles east of what would become Denver. Born conjoined at the pelvis and sharing a single set of legs, they defied the doctor's prediction of death within hours. Their mother, Catherine O'Malley Donnelly, died from blood loss 3 days later. Their father, Patrick Donnelly, a failed prospector with debts mounting like winter snow, saw dollar signs where others saw tragedy. If you value documented stories like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also, comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and fictional, drawing from historical patterns documented in sideshow archives and territorial court records. Now back to the story. By 1870, Patrick had sold the girls to Cornelius Wickham, a traveling showman who specialized in human curiosities. 6 years old. $43 in silver coins. The bill of sale, preserved in the Colorado Historical Society, lists them as livestock and entertainment property. Wickham understood the mathematics of spectacle. Two girls sharing one body meant double the draw, double the price of admission. 10 cents to stare, 25 cents to ask questions, 50 cents to touch. The cage measured 8 feet by 6 feet by 7 feet high, built from pine boards and iron bars salvaged from sea, an abandoned jail in Black Hawk. Pine cost $2 per board. Iron bars cost 50 cents each. Wickham spent $18 on construction and earned back that investment in 3 days of shows. The girls lived inside this box for 12 hours daily during show season, March through October. 7 months. Yearly, 2,504 hours locked behind bars. Wickham called it protective housing. The crowd called it education. The twins called it home because they knew nothing else. Inside the cage, 2 wooden stools. One chamber pot emptied twice daily by Wickham's assistant, a one-armed former soldier named Pete Murphy, who lost his left arm at Gettysburg. 1 water bucket refilled every 4 hours. 1 wool blanket shared between them during winter shows. The floor, covered with sawdust that smelled of horses and human waste, was changed once weekly, whether it needed it or not. Usually it needed it by day 3. The twins developed their own language during those cage years, hand signals invisible to crowds, Sarah's left fingers tapping Morse code against Mary's right thigh, Mary's shoulder blade pressing specific patterns against Sarah's spine. They communicated entire conversations while spectators stared and pointed and asked questions like, can they feel each other's pain? And do they dream the same dreams? The answers were yes and no, but the twins never spoke to strangers. Denver's territorial laws created the marriage problem. In 1878, when the twins turned 14, Colorado's legal code stated that conjoined persons sharing reproductive organs constituted a single legal entity. The law, written by territorial legislator Augustus Clark in 1876, was meant to prevent bigamy among Mormon settlers. Clark never imagined conjoined twins, but Sarah and Mary had separate torsos, separate heads, separate thoughts. The territorial judge, Hiram Wellsworth, ruled in case number 47-1878 that they were simultaneously one person and 2 people under law. One body meant 1 marriage license. 2 consciousnesses meant 2 consenting parties. They would marry each other or face charges of unmarried cohabitation, punishable by 6 months in territorial prison and a $50 fine. The legal precedent came from a case in Vermont, 1874. The Hartwell twins, also conjoined, had faced similar charges. Vermont ruled they must marry each other or be separated by state-sponsored surgery. The Hartwells chose surgery. Both died on the operating table. Colorado adopted Vermont's law word for word, including the surgical alternative that had killed the Hartwell sisters. Wellsworth studied the Vermont case for 3 weeks before making his ruling. He interviewed the twins separately, speaking to Sarah on Monday mornings and Mary on Wednesday afternoons, trying to determine if they were legally one person or two. Sarah recited poetry. Mary solved mathematical equations. Sarah preferred beef stew. Mary liked chicken soup. Sarah feared heights. Mary feared water. Two minds in one body presented a legal puzzle that had no clean solution. The ceremony happened October 3rd, 1878, in Wickham's main tent before 400 paying witnesses. Admission was 75 cents. Gate receipts totaled $300. Judge Wellsworth performed the service for a $20 fee. Sarah wore white lace on her left side, sewn by Margaret Foster, Denver's only seamstress who specialized in unusual alterations. Mary wore blue silk on her right, fabric imported from San Francisco at a cost of $3 per yard. The dress required 7 yards. They spoke their vows in whispers. "I do," echoing like a question mark. The crowd cheered every word. Wickham sold commemorative photographs for 50 cents each. 23 people bought pictures. The twins collected nothing. The wedding cake weighed 12 pounds, baked by Heinrich Müller, a German immigrant who ran Denver's only proper bakery. 2 layers, white frosting. Sugar roses on top that cost an extra $1 to make. The twins couldn't eat cake. Their shared digestive system couldn't process rich foods without violent illness. They pretended to take bites for the crowd. The cake was served to spectators after the ceremony, 47 slices at 10 cents each. That night, alone in their cage, Sarah and Mary held hands and cried, not because they were married to each other. That was just paper and legal nonsense. They cried because they realized they would never marry anyone else, never have children, never live apart. The law had made their bodies into a prison with no possibility of parole. But 1880 changed everything. A new doctor arrived in Denver, James Morrison, trained at Harvard Medical School, specializing in anatomy and surgical separation. Morrison had successfully separated 3 sets of conjoined twins in Boston and New York. His success rate, 8 surgeries, 6 survivors, 2 deaths from infection. He examined Sarah and Mary in January 1881 and declared separation possible with an 80% survival rate for both girls. Morrison's examination lasted 4 hours. He measured bone density with calipers imported from Germany. He tested nerve response with electrical stimulation devices powered by copper batteries. He mapped their shared circulatory system using a new technique called vascular injection, filling their blood vessels with colored wax to trace the pathways. Sarah and Mary's anatomy was more complex than any case he'd seen. They shared a pelvis, but had separate spinal columns. Shared kidneys, but separate hearts. Shared legs, but separate digestive systems below the waist. The surgery would require cutting through 3 major bone structures, rerouting 4 blood vessels, and reconstructing pelvic floors for both girls. Morrison estimated 8 hours of operating time. He would need 4 assistants, 200 feet of silk suture thread, and 60 pounds of ice to keep blood loss manageable. The procedure would cost $800, not including post-surgical care. Morrison had attempted this type of separation twice before. In Boston, 1876, the Patterson twins. Both survived, but one suffered permanent paralysis. In New York, 1879, the Chen sisters. One died from blood loss. The other lived but required a wheelchair. Morrison was honest about risks. Surgery meant possible death. No surgery meant certain captivity. Wickham refused the procedure. His contract with Patrick Donnelly granted him ownership until the twins reached 21 or died, whichever came first. Morrison offered $1,200 for their freedom. Wickham demanded $5,000. The case went to territorial court. Judge Wellsworth, now 73 and suffering from palsy, ruled that married persons could not be separated without mutual consent of both spouses and their legal guardian. Sarah wanted the surgery. Mary feared death more than captivity. Wickham held the contract. The law held them all in place like iron bars. The breaking point came September 22nd, 1882. During the evening show, a drunk miner from Leadville climbed into the cage. His name was Thomas McKenna, age 34, Irish immigrant who'd spent 6 months underground digging silver from the Matchless mine. McKenna had lost 3 fingers to a cave-in the previous month and been drinking whiskey since noon to numb the phantom pain. He grabbed Mary's arm, yanking hard enough to dislocate Sarah's shoulder. Sarah screamed. Mary bit the man's wrist down to bone, her teeth severing the radial artery. Blood sprayed across the cage floor in arterial pulses. The crowd thought it was part of the act until McKenna collapsed from blood loss. Wickham's assistant, Pete Murphy, climbed into the cage and applied a tourniquet using his belt. McKenna lost consciousness after 90 seconds. Dr. Morrison, who happened to be in the crowd studying the twins' movement patterns, pushed forward and took control. He sutured the artery using silk thread from his medical bag. McKenna survived, but his right hand never worked properly again. Sheriff Thomas Brennan arrested all 3, Sarah, Mary, and the miner. The legal question became, if one twin commits assault, are both guilty? If both twins are married to each other, can one testify against the other? Colorado law had no precedent for conjoined defendants. The territorial attorney, William Haywood, argued that Mary had committed assault with a deadly weapon, meaning her teeth. The defense attorney, Samuel Richardson, argued that Mary had acted in self-defense of her sister's body, which was also her own body. The case sat in limbo for 2 months while the twins remained in Denver jail, cell number 7, finally free of the cage but trapped in cells measuring 7 feet by 4 feet. The jail cell was smaller than their cage, but felt larger because no crowd stared through the bars. They could whisper without performing. They could cry without being charged extra admission. Morrison used those 2 months to build public pressure. He wrote to Eastern newspapers, describing the twins' conditions in clinical detail. The New York Tribune ran a story titled, "The Slave Wives of Colorado" on October 15, 1882. The Boston Herald called it "Barbarism in the West" in their October 23rd edition. The Philadelphia Inquirer published Morrison's complete medical examination results, including detailed drawings of the twins' anatomy. Letters flooded Governor Frederick Pitkin's office demanding action. 237 letters in 6 weeks. Morrison organized a legal defense fund through Denver's First Presbyterian Church that raised $1,800 from donations averaging $3.12 each. The letters came from doctors, lawyers, ministers, and housewives across the country. Dr. Elizabeth Blackwell, America's first female physician, wrote from New York calling the case medical slavery. Senator George Hoare of Massachusetts threatened congressional hearings if Colorado didn't resolve the situation. Mrs. Frances Willard, president of the Woman's Christian Temperance Union, organized prayer meetings in 14 cities demanding the twins' freedom. But the most powerful letter came from an unexpected source. Chang Bunker, the surviving twin of the famous Chang and Eng Bunker, conjoined twins who had toured America for decades. Chang wrote from North Carolina, describing his life after his brother Eng died in 1874. When death separates conjoined twins, Chang wrote, the survivor dies within hours. When surgery separates them properly, both can live full lives. I know the difference between death and freedom. These girls deserve the chance to find out. The solution came from an unexpected source. Patrick Donnelly, now 58 and dying from lung fever contracted in the mines, appeared in court December 4, 1882. He revoked Wickham's custody contract, citing breach of care provisions after the cage assault. Judge Wellsworth, swayed by public pressure and Morrison's legal arguments, annulled the marriage on grounds of coercion and declared both twins free citizens of Colorado Territory. The separation surgery happened December 20th, 1882 in Morrison's clinic on Larimer Street. 9 hours and 17 minutes. 4 assistants, Dr. Henry Walsh, Dr. Margaret Thompson, Dr. Samuel Lee, and medical student Robert Chen. No anesthesia strong enough for conjoined anatomy, ether, couldn't be administered safely to patients sharing blood vessels. Instead, Morrison used a new technique called regional nerve blocking, injecting cocaine solution directly into nerve clusters to numb sensation without affecting consciousness. Sarah and Mary remained awake during the entire procedure. They held hands until Morrison made the final cut, separating their fingers. Sarah's last words before separation, "See you on the other side." Mary's response, "Which side is that?" Morrison worked methodically, cutting through bone with a surgical saw that required sharpening 3 times during the operation. He separated their shared pelvis by removing a 2-inch section of bone from each girl, then reconstructed their hip sockets using bone grafts taken from their ribs. The most dangerous moment came 6 hours into surgery, when Mary's blood pressure dropped to 60/30. Her pulse weakened to 40 beats per minute. Morrison administered digitalis directly into her heart, using a long needle inserted between her ribs. Her blood pressure stabilized within minutes. Sarah remained conscious throughout Mary's crisis, squeezing Dr. Thompson's hand and repeating, "Don't let her die, don't let her die," until Mary's vital signs improved. Both twins survived the operation. Sarah recovered full mobility within 6 months. Mary walked with a cane for the rest of her life, but called it the most beautiful stick in the world. The total cost of the surgery was $947, including post-operative care. The defense fund covered $800. Morrison absorbed the remainder as his contribution to medical science. Sarah moved to San Francisco in 1884, married a telegraph operator named William Hayes in 1886, and had 3 children, Catherine in 1888, Patrick in 1890, and James in 1892. She worked as a seamstress specializing in children's clothes, earning between $12 and $18 per month, depending on the season. She died in 1927 at age 63 from pneumonia, never speaking publicly about the cage years. Her obituary in the San Francisco Chronicle made no mention of her conjoined past. Mary stayed in Denver, became a seamstress working from a shop on Blake Street, and founded the Colorado Society for the Protection of Human Exhibitions in 1885. The society successfully lobbied for laws banning the caging of people with physical differences, passing legislation in Colorado, Wyoming, and Utah by 1892. Mary never married, but adopted 2 orphaned children, Ellen Murphy in 1887 and David Chen in 1889. She died in 1931 at age 67 from heart failure, surrounded by friends who knew her only as the woman who fought to protect others from exploitation. The twins exchanged letters every month from December 1882 until Sarah's death in 1927. 437 letters total, each written in the secret hand signal code they developed during their cage years. Mary preserved every letter in a wooden box made from pine boards, salvaged from their original cage. The box measured exactly 8 inches by 6 inches by 7 inches, a perfect scale model of their childhood prison. Wickham's show folded within a year. He died broke in Cheyenne, Wyoming, 1886, found in a boarding house with 17 cents in his pocket and a stack of unpaid bills. His tent and cages were burned by local authorities as public health hazards. The cage itself survived longer than its owner. Denver's Museum of Natural History acquired it in 1891 and displayed it as an example of frontier entertainment methods until 1968, when protesters demanded its removal. The museum stored it in basement archives for 43 years until a fire destroyed most of the collection in 2011, but one piece remained. In 2019, workers renovating the museum's foundation discovered a small wooden box buried beneath the old cage display area. Inside were 2 items, a child's diary written in 2 different hands and a marriage certificate dated October 3, 1878. The diary's final entry, dated December 19, 1882, reads, "Tomorrow we become 2 people instead of 1 person. Sarah is scared. I am scared. But scared together is different than scared apart." The marriage certificate still hangs in the Colorado History Museum, a reminder that law and humanity don't always align. Sometimes freedom requires breaking the very rules designed to protect us. Sometimes the cage is legal, and the key is courage.